Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Zeus Yamianis. I have a PhD in philosophy of education, exploring the cultural foundations of education, philosophy of education that really went into determining things like critical media literacy. And I have a background in biology, and I worked in a physiological chemistry lab, so I have some notion of science. My concern has been that with this whole COVID controversy, so much of it has been ideological, people with unexamined biases, and also very partial views, kind of pigeonholing themselves. And at the request of some friends, I'm going to try to do an integrative look at some key questions around the COVID-19 epidemic and the SARS-CoV-2 virus in particular that is associated with it. So the first question that I'm going after right now, again in an integrative way, is whether or not the virus itself was either, I wouldn't say lab created because that's a little too specific, but let's just say human manipulated, and whether or not it combined with other forms or something, that it wasn't a human intervention that caused a lot of the virulence and problems with it, or it was completely natural. I want to make it a very clear distinction between those two. And when I say completely natural, I am not referring to something cultivated in a lab that was natural and then got out through the cultivation in that lab into a wet market and so forth. So even that I would call human introduced. So I'm very willing to show, to believe, and to acknowledge and to see, given the evidence, that there's not some shadowy conspiracy or a bioweaponry intention to release this virus into the human population. But that's always a possibility, but that's not what I'm focusing on. And here I'm actually going to be talking about the origin of the virus itself. People can speculate about motives. I'm more here to talk about evidence, preponderance of evidence. And I use something, and I'll go into the corner here, that's very much a kind of rubric that you might use in a courtroom. So if you look here, the Legal Information Institute at Cornell Law talks about burden of proof. We all see from these court shows that you're looking for means, motive, and opportunity to do these sorts of things. And really the means, motive, and opportunity has less to do with an intentional release of this virus, because I'll sort of release a little bit my conclusion. I don't believe that it was intentionally released, but it does have to do with covering up where it came from and various conflicts of interest and various self-interests that are served by trying to create a perception or reality that makes yourself look good and puts the blame elsewhere. So I'm not here to blame anyone. Full disclosure in terms of my political background, I'm not a supporter of Joe Biden or of Donald Trump. I'm not a supporter of alt-right or neoliberal agendas with regard to their technocratic agendas on the neoliberal side, trying to basically make excuses for sciences and cover the mistakes of sciences up, nor am I a conspiracy community person built on trying to cover for Donald Trump's frank incompetence with regard to this matter. So I'm, in that sense, politically and culturally, I'm a bit of a more moderate. I'm actually a supporter of Bernie Sanders and for Medicare for all. And I think, if anything, this epidemic proves that we need universal health care that can be supported by the government and not simply delivered by private companies for profit. So that's my background. And when it comes to my orientation here and my background with regard to investigating this subject matter, it has to do with the fact that I have taught critical media literacy. I do have a science background, and I'm a good BS detector. And I, as a part of my PhD, I integrated anthropology, psychology, history, sociology. I'm a good integrator and I have a good skill in that. So that's what I'm going to do here, to bring the different pieces together and see if we can't actually stitch together or puzzle together a picture that's actually going to help people clarify the full scope and meaning and depth of this one question. I will work on other questions, but I'm starting with this one. Now, what does it mean? And this is very, very important. What does it mean to prove something? To prove something in court doesn't mean absolute proof. There are many court cases, even on the criminal level, that are won on compelling circumstantial evidence. If it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck and swims like a duck, it's a duck. That's pretty much compelling circumstantial evidence. You may not have the smoking gun, you may not have the murder weapon, you may not have the fingerprints on it, but you have witnesses and times and everything lining up perfectly to not only suggest, but to affirm that a particular person did something wrong beyond a reasonable doubt. In civil cases, it's even less than that. It's clear and convincing evidence or preponderance of evidence, probable cause, reasonable belief. So that's what's going to guide us, not some kind of absolute proof, because what happened has happened now. And I want to stress this to everybody out there so that you aren't being taken for a ride here, okay? With the advent of Trump and the advent of conventional science and business and lobbyists dominating reality, what they're basically saying this: as long as you can't prove absolutely that I did something, then I'm absolutely innocent. We saw this in the impeachment hearing, and we also see it in court cases involved with chemical companies who just hide evidence. Donald Trump destroyed evidence or withheld evidence, and he said, I'm innocent because you can't use the evidence I withheld to prove that I'm wrong. Absolutely. So this is a very dangerous concept, because what it does, if you look for absolute proof, is you just encourage people to destroy evidence. And I think the same is true in this coronavirus thing. To hide or destroy evidence, I think the Chinese government is definitely guilty of that. We'll get into that. And I certainly think that trying to place blame elsewhere, as Donald Trump is trying to do with China, is also wrong. And a little bit of a spoiler alert, it turns out his major advisor, Dr. Fauci, is actually the one who green-lighted under his administration gain-of-function research that essentially weaponized or empowered these viruses to infect humans after the Obama administration stopped that research. It's called gain-of-function research. So if you're looking for a conspiracy, look the other direction toward Fauci. And to certainly, I don't honestly think that Trump is smart enough to understand what was going on in that situation. But nonetheless, his administration supported that research and lifting the ban on the research that essentially weaponized these coronavirus types to infect humans. And we will see if there's a link to that and the current COVID-19 outbreak. Again, there is no absolute proof across the board, but we're going to look at preponderance of evidence, reasonable doubt, okay, beyond a reasonable doubt, and we're going to find what the best explanation or most likely explanation is, and we're going to involve the motivations, the methods, and the opportunity that people had around this issue. And I'm going to be basically taken to task almost everybody. Neoliberals are going to be taken to task. Conspiracy theorists are going to be taken to task. Trump is going to be taken to task. Neoliberal corporate butt kissers are going to be taken to task to see how this system works to disadvantage you and me, that's people on the ground, and advantage other people with power who, one, try to offload the blame on somebody, and then to take the credit or profit that comes from, for instance, developing a drug that may be used in an epidemic that they screwed up and created in the first place. So here is where we're heading. This is our standard of proof, if you will. It's not absolute proof, like I said, because you could say that even with a video showing someone, you could say, hey, it was a deep fake video. You could always find some way to impugn it. How did your fingerprints get on that gun? Well, someone framed me. They put the gun in my hand while I was asleep. That could have happened. It absolutely could have happened. And you can't say with 100% certainty it didn't happen. Now, if that's the train of reasoning we're going to have, then we can't prove almost anything, and everything becomes just an exercise of power. So this is an important exercise, not just in terms of engaging a particular issue. It's an important exercise when it comes to understanding truth matters at all, and that we can go through and we can actually, this will be a lesson as well as an exploration or investigation that allows you to go through evidence with me and to make some determinations. And by bringing it all together and not siding with one side over another, we get away from this ridiculous clash of cultures and sectarian and us against them polarization and balkanization in our country. It's really a time for us to come together, and we can't come together unless we actually have some facts. So let's go into this. I will go to the next tab here. This was the most important thing that got my explanation going. I saw a lot of scientific articles saying there's no way this is anything other than natural. It's all conspiracy theory. Until I ran across this scientist article and I said, hey, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Again, this is the scientist. This is science.com, thescientist.com, the article written by Jeff Axe. This is in, again, November 16, 2015. And it even mentions that on social media, they're saying that the information included in this article lends itself to some people thinking that this virus was lab created. I wouldn't say lab created necessarily, but certainly lab manipulated or lab influenced in such a way that you will find that there is actual evidence pointing in that direction. So anyway, this is talking about an SHC-014 coronavirus found in horseshoe bats in China and the backbone of a SARS virus that was actually artificially created in order to actively and effectively infect human beings. This is called a chimeric virus, okay? It's literally manipulated. And again, this shows, it's called SHC-014, was a artificially constructed surface protein to bind and infect human cells right here. We can see that. Validating concern that this virus and other coronaviruses, this was a coronavirus, found in bat species may be capable of making the leap to people. Now, the ostensible reason for doing this dangerous study, which is literally creating superbugs way in advance of our immune system, way in advance of normal evolution of bugs, is to say, well, something like this may happen. I think there's a somewhat more nefarious reason for this, and it's driven by profit. If we have these bugs and they happen to get out, or if they happen to occur naturally, we'll have the patented drugs that everybody needs so we can make tens if not hundreds of billions of dollars, depending on how big the epidemic. So to me, there is no reason to create a leap in evolution artificially for viruses unless you're looking to profit from them. The chance of them getting out of a lab and creating an epidemic far in advance of our immune system is far greater and far more disastrous than not having a drug to deal with it. Where our own immune system can deal with incremental change, they cannot deal with an artificially manipulated bug that's hundreds of years in advance of our immune system, in advance of nature, of Frankenflu, as my wife Regina would say. So, and here's the concern. Quote, this is Simon Wayne Hobson, a virologist of the Pasteur Institute in Paris. If the new virus escaped, nobody could predict the trajectory. And that's exactly what we have here. Again, if we go down to look at it, it said Barrick's study, this is the guy from UNC Chapel Hill, okay? University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, which, by the way, did work with China, the Wuhan Institute of Virology, on this research, okay? On this chimeric virus, artificially manipulated virus, was gained before a moratorium was announced, preventing this research or freezing it because of its danger. Just note that, okay? And another person, a biodefense expert at Rutgers down here, Richard Ebright, said, quote, the only impact of this work is the creation in a lab of a new non-natural risk. It doesn't really have a benefit, except if you're potentially looking to create drugs or vaccines against it. You create the need, and then you create the solution. We saw this with the opioid epidemic that has killed hundreds of thousands of people hooked, many of them out of nowhere, they had an accident and they got hooked on opioids. Hundreds of thousands of people in this country have died as a result of that, up to 37,000 in the top years around it. One family, this Sackler family, made billions off of these opioids and then attempted to do research and introduce drugs to treat the problem. So if you are a pure profiteer, this kind of creating the need and then creating the solution gets you money going both ways. The same thing with warring. War profiteers. Oftentimes they'll fund both sides in a war. So it doesn't matter who wins or who loses, they're winning. Okay, they're getting profit from both sides. So we have to always be conscious of motive. Remember I said motive, methods, and opportunities? Motive here is profit. Motive here also is scientific arrogance, a kind of God complex, where scientists want to create this superbug because they want to study, and then, in some ways, there's a kind of Frankenstein complex here. Like, it lives. I've created life. I've created a new and novel form of life. And the destructive form of it, much like scientists who created the atom bomb or created napalm or created any of these other types of very horrendous things, those consequences are not even considered. It's like, I didn't decide to use it. Well, why are you making it so that it could possibly be used? There's no real benefit to these things. They are purely destructive. There's no doubt that this virus is only one intent, to be destructive to humans. It was engineered artificially to be destructive to humans, ostensibly to study the effects and possible leaps in evolution of superbugs in the future. But the far greater risk is that this one will get out and will be far in excess of our evolutionary capacity to handle it now. So we'll move on here. This is right in Wikipedia. This is, let me see, I'll move this thing in a little bit here just to make sure that you can actually see it. This is the virus they were working on. Look at it. SHCO14-CoV. Very, very similar. Very, very similar to the virus, the COVID SARS-CoV-2 virus, and has that artificial gain of function, which is this little hook. The little spikes you see in that coronavirus, okay? Not only the spike, the ability to attach more, and it was this particular virus here was engineered to attach more readily to human things, but there was a cleaving mechanism that allowed it to actually pierce the cell and get into it. Both of these artificially engineered with this particular virus, believe it or not. And you know what the scientists say here? And you can see it right here at the very bottom. I'll just go read it since it's so dramatically simple. It's a SARS-like coronavirus that infects horseshoe bats, this SHCO14-CoV. From April 2011 to September 2012, 117 anal swabs and fecal samples of bats were collected from this colony in the Yunnan province of West China. 27 of them contained 7 different isolates of a SARS-like coronavirus, which 2 were previously unknown, called RSHHCSO14 and RS3367. So you can get new viruses, and you can discover them, and you can keep them secret and do experiments on them, and that none of the rest of the world knows, okay? And if you're China, okay, and you have your own virology lab, and you're taught techniques from the US government, and you're actually funded by the US government, you can do secret work all you want. Just like the factories when I was over there in Beijing, they turned out designer goods. They just kept the factories going, and they would just sell it to their own population. They just kept it secret, creating an economy there. There's one place called the Silk Market, and that's notorious for doing this. You can get things for 1/10 the price there. The exact same stuff from the exact same factories. It wasn't a knockoff. It was the same thing. They just weren't telling the people back in the United States. And the people in the United States didn't care. They were saving so much money on labor that both of them just kind of got together. And I think that's a little bit what's going on here with the COVID type of research, the coronavirus type research. So in 2015, getting back here, in the University of North Carolina, the Wuhan Institute, the UNC Chapel Hill and the Wuhan Institute of Virology conducted research showing the virus could be made to infect the human HELA cell line through the use of reverse genetics, get this, to create a chimeric virus consisting of a surface protein, SHCO14, and the backbone of a SARS virus. Okay, this is real, folks. They're basically doing something that's almost identical to the COVID-19 virus, okay? And they're purposely creating it to infect humans, okay? Now, they're saying, and we go down here, it was primarily engineered to infect humans, and it's been shown to differ by over 7%. So it's 93% similar to the COVID-19 SARS-CoV-2 virus, all right? But they want to make it look big. They say it's 5,000 nucleotides different, okay? But that's only 7%, okay? Now, here's what I want to say here, guys. If these were novel coronaviruses that were newly discovered, what would stop China from using some of their own novel coronaviruses and applying the same technology to that to create a SARS-CoV-2 virus? Nothing. It wouldn't be known by the rest of the world. It would only be compared to known data. And of course, China is notoriously secretive. So this is to say, oh, it doesn't compare to the stuff we know is not a defense, is not proof, is not even a logical proof. If anything, I would think China would try this research with novel coronaviruses they don't let the rest of the world know about. And then it would just simply be a matter of, are they purposely infecting somebody else? Are they trying to create bioweapons? I think the evidence and logic is almost 0% chance of that. Why would you release a virus right outside of your own research institute? Literally, the wet market where they say this originated is 900 feet, like 3 football fields away from their version of the CDC, as we'll talk about later. Okay, so it's almost definitely an accidental release, and there are numerous safety violations, which I will go over, which suggests that this is the case. Not to mention that China shut down any real investigation and has tried to wage economic sanctions and warfare against anyone who even tries to look into their business. So again, we're already building a strong case that the motive here was the Chinese government trying to cover up basically an accidental release that really took care of them and a lot of the world now. The shame, and you have to understand this about Asian culture too. I've lived in the Philippines for 3 years. I've taught multicultural education, and the number one reason, the number one motive a lot of times culturally for the Asians that I've known and culturally for the Asian diaspora is saving face. We don't understand in American and European cultures for the most part because we're more individualistic. We're more, you take the risk, you get out there. But in Asian cultures, the traditional Asian cultures in particular, you do not want to shame yourself, your family, or your country. So if something goes wrong, you absolutely bury it. So it is consistent with a cultural attribute. And this can get to extreme examples. When I was reading one of Malcolm Gladwell's books, he talked about the time when literally a couple co-pilots to a lead pilot in a plane basically knew the plane was going to go into a hill. And it was one of these crashes that happened and, obviously killed everyone on board. But they wouldn't literally say, you can't do that, and shove him out of the way and take hold of it. They would give these kind of subtle suggestions that maybe he's not making the right choice, even as they knew they were literally going to lose their own life, lose the lives of all their passengers, because there's such an emphasis, even a life and death, willing to lose life or death over it, in saving face. So in terms of cultural motive, China and a lot of the Asian countries would have an extraordinary cultural motive to hide this. Nothing can be done about it. Another example of this, where it worked to U.S.'s advantage, is when the U.S. had a submarine that surfaced really quickly. I don't know if you remember this. I think it killed 9 people because they didn't really check above them, and it literally did. They did. The captain was trying to show off and did a rapid ascent and literally demolished that boat, and I think they killed something like 9 people. Well, the Japanese boat was not, the American was trying to avoid liabilities. They're not going to admit anything, not anything. All the Chinese wanted was to say, I'm sorry, to honor the dead, because they wanted the U.S. to save face and them to save face. They just needed a little apology. They weren't looking to sue. So there's a different side to that. But again, when it comes to this kind of stuff, it's not that helpful. So let's go on to the next slide here. Again, I'm including I'm not sure these will continue to be up. Who knows with the way that the debate has been controlled. But the next one is Newsweek, hardly a conspiracy rag, okay? But the thing I find so interesting about this is, irony is just too thick here. Believe it or not, Trump's right-hand person, Dr. Fauci, was the very person who gave an exception to stop a moratorium imposed by the Obama administration to stop this kind of research. It was Fauci, Trump's right-hand man, who created exceptions to that and then started this research again, even with the danger and even with the initial moratorium on this. So if there is a conspiracy to be had here, guys, the facts say it's Trump's conspiracy and Fauci, or Fauci using Trump to advance his own agenda. It's not Obama. It's not Clinton. It's not something else. It's not someone just trying to pull Trump's administration down. It's Trump himself and his own incompetence and his own inability to basically to mind his own ship that's pulling himself down, as he is in so many areas. So this is just too rich. I'm just going to go through this, then I'll go to the beginning. Nevertheless, in 2014, under pressure from the Obama administration, the National Institutes of Health instituted a moratorium on the work on this gain-of-function research that allowed a virus to be artificially manipulated to infect human beings when it normally wouldn't. That's what's called gain-of-function research. And what we just discussed is gain-of-function research, okay? 3 years later, December 2017, in the middle of the Trump administration, the NIH ended the moratorium, and the second phase of the NIAID project, including the gain-of-function research, began. Who was the head of NIAID? Fauci, okay? Or at least he was for a good part of this. The NIH established a framework for determining how the research would go forward. Scientists would get approval from a panel of experts who would decide whether the risks are justified. Now, were these publicly open panels? Was there public records of these? The answer is no. They were done in secret. In early 2019, we're down here, after a report of Science magazine discovered that the NIH had approved 2, get this, influenza research projects that used gain-of-function methods that's artificially making them more virulent, where they normally wouldn't affect the human beings, and now they're infecting human beings, okay? In an editorial in the Washington Post. Here's what it said. We have serious doubts about whether these experiments should be conducted at all. Again, Tom Inglesby of Johns Hopkins University and Mark Lipswich of Harvard. With deliberations kept behind closed doors, none of us will have the opportunity to understand how the government arrived at these decisions. So they're not open to scientific panels. They're not open to scientific scrutiny. What they are, as it turns out, profit-driven, Frankenstein, scientific arrogance, power games move behind closed doors. Whenever someone brings something behind closed doors, you have to be automatically suspect of their motive. And again, what was their method here, right? To use a naive and not terribly intellectually engaged president who has hired the guy who's basically heading up this project to do whatever he wants. And that's what you have. Again, Fauci is he's a piece of work. He's not a hero. He's an opportunist. I'm going to do another video that includes Mikovits, the person that he went after, who's an actual real scientist. And he's colluded in many ways to try with industry and with patent processes to try to make money off of this. And again, that's my opinion. And that seems to be supported, at least anecdotally, by the testimony of people who've talked to, engaged with Dr. Fauci. So again, I'm relying upon a lot of that. Since this is behind closed door, I cannot prove it. Therefore, I will not make an outright factual statement about this. This is my opinion and my assessment, and not a claim with regard to Dr. Fauci. But I think people's actions do betray their motives, their methods, and the opportunities that they're pursuing. So he funded this organization led by Dr. Fauci, that NIAID, funded science at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. In 2019, with the back of NIAID, the NIH committed $3.7 million over 6 years, including that gain of function research. Scientists criticized it. The SARS-CoV-2, the virus now causing COVID-19, the global pandemic, is believed to have originated in bats, just like those viruses that were being experimented with in Wuhan, in the Wuhan virology lab. Okay, and here it is. U.S. intelligence, this is the key phrase, after originally asserting that the coronavirus had occurred naturally, conceded last month that the pandemic may have originated in a leak from the Wuhan lab. Okay. Now, conventional scientists trying to cover the butts of their fellow scientists and trying to save face of saying it's possible but not likely that this is the case. I'm going to show you that it's likely, very likely. Again, is there a smoking gun when you cover up evidence? Is there absolute proof when you cover up evidence? Is there absolute proof when you start making decisions behind closed doors and not bringing it open to scientific scrutiny? No. That's the reason why we democratically have to move in that direction. Now, Zero Hedge, which is kind of a gonzo publication, and frankly, you get everything from alt-writers to conspiracy theorists to really well-written articles, oftentimes on the economy and news events. The main thing I look for when I'm looking on a particular site that has a variety of different perspectives is how much it's verified or backed up. So let's look at that now. And this is going to provide some of the real basic information that we're going to need, okay? So this says, here are the key findings from a bombshell government dossier on China's bat virus program. You have to understand the intelligence agency is investigating this, okay? And this was leaked, a dossier by Western intelligence agencies that was leaked, I guess, to this paper. And it concluded that China lied and deliberately suppressed or destroyed evidence in the crucial early days of the COVID-19 outbreak. Of course they did. Again, if you accidentally release this and you're in an Asian culture all about saving face and you don't want to be held responsible for all these deaths, then you're going to do that. And I'm not even suggesting if I were a government official in the country, I wouldn't have done the same myself. I would say I'm trying to protect my country and my country's reputation. Nonetheless, it still points in the direction that you did it accidentally. We should be able to fess up and say, hey, we did it and we're sorry. We need to develop much more public, open, and multinational attention to this really dangerous research. That would have been the right way to do it. They didn't do it, and now we're in the problem we're in right now. The key theme of the dossier in China's negligence and lies resulted in endangerment to other countries. Again, here you go. This is from the Daily Telegraph, an English newspaper of record and not some kind of right-wing rag or left-wing conspiracy theory or whatever you want to call it. It's a normal publication. Furthermore, evidence was destroyed and China refused to provide live samples to international scientists working on the vaccine. So now you see the cover-up is actually getting in the way of creating an actual vaccine or some kind of drug that may actually work with this. Again, saving face is more important than even life and death, just like with that example of the Korean pilots. Again, it points to suppression and destruction of evidence, viral samples ordered destroyed at genomics lab, very similar to Trump destroying evidence when it came to his impeachment. Again, the whole notion is if you can't prove I did it because I have power and we have secrecy and I eliminate the evidence, then I'm innocent. That's not true at all. When we begin to connect the dots, we begin to see what is the likely case or the preponderance of evidence or beyond a reasonable doubt. We will not achieve absolute truth because you can always find some kind of excuse, okay? So the dossier slams China's constant lies about the virus, despite evidence of human transmission from earlier December, okay? They began to deny it. They imposed international travel bans, right? Not international, but internal travel bans. So they knew that it was bad. They weren't going to let them go in between each other in China, but didn't apparently outlaw international travel. They threatened Australia for continuing to investigate because some of these, I think, came from Australia. Some of these samples came from Australia. So now the question, was it engineered? It does not reach a conclusion on this because it is nearly impossible to actually definitively prove it. There's no smoking gun because of destruction of evidence. But the official U.S. position is that the virus was not engineered, but that it escaped either from the Wuhan Institute of Virology or the Chinese CDC, which is located, get this, 900 feet away from the Wuhan wet market, 3 football fields away. And that's a coincidence. I got into this big argument with a scientist friend of mine on Facebook, and I said, guys, you cannot establish probability that is anything narrower than 1 in trillion, maybe, to have a completely novel coronavirus with gain of function that exceeds and leaps past evolutionary, hundreds of years probably past normal evolution on gain of function. That's already been demonstrated in this Wuhan lab working with the UNC, and we'll talk about later Fort Detrick, which is a bioweapons facility. It does bioweapons and biowarfare research. Okay, maybe not a bioweapons facility. They'll say it's because we're trying to prevent them. Okay, and then it just happens to be 900 feet away from the CDC, which is the other major thing besides the lab, which is only 14 kilometers or about 9 miles away. The chances of that happening, okay, a naturally occurring virus with the same gain of function as what the lab is working on, and with 93% of the same nucleotides, and 900 feet away from their CDC, come on. I mean, the chances of that happen are what, 1 in a trillion, 1 in a billion? Given all the world out there and all the time and space out there happening right after doing this work, come on. I mean, that just strains credibility, okay? And then when we look at all the explanations, and we will, that the scientists say, quote, prove that it's a natural thing, we find not a bit of solid evidence. And it's almost laughable, but I'll show you what's going on with that. This is Fox News. Again, take it for what it's worth. John Roberts is at least somewhat of a serious news guy. And he said, senior intelligence sources tell me that this is an agreement among most of the 17 intelligence agencies that COVID-19 originated in the Wuhan lab. The source stressed that the release is believed to be a mistake and was not intentional. And I agree with that because, again, why would you infect your own people right outside your own lab? If you wanted to get away with something, you know, doesn't make sense, okay? And we will see that the lab protocol were horrible. Their safety record was horrible. So it even lends more credence to that. So anyway, here we go. The intelligence community also concurs with the wide scientific consensus that COVID-19 virus was not man-made or genetically modified. Again, their motive right now and their method is they don't want to create a situation with China. They know it's already out there. They already know that China probably accidentally released it. What good is going to happen by trying to knock China over the head? Message to Trump, even if China did this, 1, the lab was designed and funded by the United States and the technology shipped over there. So just like our goods, designed corporate headquarters in the United States, labor and research shipped over to, made in China, right? Product made in China. So we are at least as guilty for creating this, if not more so. It was our technology and our funding that gave rise to it. It's like Chinese sweatshops. You can't then say, oh, well, those Chinese, they treat their workers horrible. It's our corporation sending work over there to fund that and to support that. Same thing with unfortunately, with our viral research. So, so the intelligence community is saying, oh, yeah, it's natural. Just move on. Well, of course they're saying that. Nothing is going to be gained through international relationships. And at this point, probably nothing's going to be gained, even in terms of researching a remedy to this, can be gained by blaming China. So it's kind of like a move on, nothing to see here. There's plenty to see here. I think personally they should fully investigate that, simply admit it, so that we can recover what is likely the virus that they were working on that made this, that they ended up destroying, or at least hiding, okay? So we could actually get going on the work to remedy this epidemic. So that's a so-called consensus. But as Zero Hedge highlighted in January, there were people modifying bat coronaviruses to test its transmissibility to other species. Here is, again, the key phrase here. In November 2015, this again reaffirms what I just said in that other article. Zheng Li, the person working in the lab, that's her right there. Okay, again, I don't think she's a pernicious, and she's not like some kind of cipher or some kind of spy or some kind of weapons person, I don't think. But her team was working in conjunction with UNC, all right, on a SARS-like coronavirus and how it could jump directly from bats to human. And there was currently no cure or treatment. The Western dossier notes from the study to examine the emerging potential to infect humans of circulating bat coronaviruses. We built a coronavirus basically to do exactly that, with a zoonotic COVID spike protein, right, from that sequence from the bat. They literally developed a gain of function so that had a outer covering that would attach more readily and a cleavage function that could get into the cell more easily. They designed that artificially, okay? Our current COVID has that same capacity. To my knowledge, I have not seen a single example of a naturally occurring virus that has that gain of function. Duh. Logic. Okay? How can it be a coincidence that the very gain of function that we have artificially created was somehow simultaneously and at the same time developed naturally in a way that looks like a huge leap, 50, 100, Makovitz was saying even 800 years into the future, or 500, okay? The chances of that are what? 1 in a trillion, 1 in a billion, 1 in a quadrillion? Again, come on, connect the dots here. Again, this Professor Ralph Barrick, is making excuses. Of course he's going to make excuses. Why is he going to make excuses? If his research contributed, just like somebody whose research on the atom bomb may have contributed to that, would want to deny that. Even Einstein's research was used ancillarily or indirectly in the development of the atomic bomb. And I'm sure, from what I hear, that Einstein was not very happy about that. It happens. Science research can be used for nefarious purposes, sometimes without their knowledge. But in this case, you can't. Any scientist worth their salt has to say, wait a minute, if I'm creating a super virus, of course this can be weaponized. Of course this can get out and create untold damage. That's why you got to get rid of the scientific arrogance, get rid of the Frankenstein complex and say, this is research that should not be done. You see a lot of this with cloning. With cloning, they have put a much more of a tamping on it for obvious reasons. They should do it with this. Unfortunately, haven't. Okay, key dates in the cover-up. If you want to go to this article, you can see the link up there. You can to get the key dates, but basically they did cover it up. Okay, they published a study revealing they created a new virus that was on November 9th in the lab from SARS-CoV. Could have been this one. We don't know, because it would have been destroyed. And it would have been very similar, obviously, to the one that was worked on in UNC Chapel Hill. 5 days after a man linked to the Wuhan's seafood market presented pneumonia-like symptoms, again, 900 feet away from the CDC and only 9 miles away from where this lab is. And again, an interesting note here, in the United States, this lab, this COVID-19 virus, this SARS-CoV-2 virus, seems to just love raw meat. Even in sparsely populated places like, was it North Dakota, South Dakota, the Tyson plant, this virus explodes to the population. I know they're working in close quarters, but I've got a theory here and I'd like somebody to research it. Does this COVID-19 virus like raw meat? Does it enjoy, or does that help to accelerate its proliferation? You know, and it would be very interesting. That had implications. Again, disclosure, I'm a vegan. You know, I'm not a militant vegan. I'm not trying to push people into it. But if it turns out, and a lot of these microbes are really related to meat, and especially meat that's going a little rotten or is not kept in good conditions, then we may actually have more and more direct scientific evidence suggesting that it would be healthier from a sanitary perspective to really gear more toward a plant-based whole foods diet. But that's an aside. Again, look at that again. All right, that first one. They had revealed they had created a new virus. Okay. Then there was this guy getting pneumonia-like symptoms just a little after that. Chinese health authorities told a novel disease then affecting some 180 patients was caused by a new coronavirus. Evidence of a new virus emerges from the Wuhan patient data. December 31st, Chinese internet authorities began censoring social media. 8 Wuhan doctors who warned about the new virus were detained and condemned. January 3rd, Chinese top health authority issues a gag order. January 5th, Wuhan Health Commission stops releasing daily updates on new cases. January 10th, an official says the outbreak is under control, mostly a mild condition. Again, all this saving face stuff going on here. And then finally, and then there was another commission chief privately warns colleagues that virus is likely to develop into a major public health event. And officials in Beijing prevent the Wuhan Institute of Virology from sharing samples with the University of Texas. China's internet watchdog tightens controls. February 9th, citizen journalist Fang Bing disappears. April 17th, Wuhan belatedly raises its official fatalities. So you can see, again, motive means an opportunity here. You can see what's motivating this. Again, I don't think it's pernicious. It's saving face, but it's dangerous saving face. So let's go to the next article here. And it's somewhat of a recapitulation of the other article. But what I liked here is that it has kind of a good summary of the things we know around it. Not just the events leading to the Chinese denial, but also the connect the dots facts, okay? None of these are really disputed. Again, people say, well, we don't know for sure. But, you know, this is important, okay? As this article suggests, this is probably the easiest game of connect the dots, and I have to kind of agree. I don't want to laugh. This is extraordinarily serious point, but it's almost absurd, and it's like black humor. It's almost absurd, the kind of coincidences and correlations here that so clearly point to the fact that this was artificially created. And yet there's this mass delusion that seeks to do everything to avoid that. What I think is fairly straightforward. Here are the dots. In 2013, scientists at Wuhan, I'll just call it WIV, Wuhan Institute of Virology, collected horseshoe bats at a cave 1,000 miles away infected with virus that causes COVID-19. Now, that's an interesting claim to make. If we actually clicked on that, we might actually do that. I haven't actually looked into that one because they said there's no such thing. Okay, we can look into that article separately. I'm going to go through the other points there. We'll come back to it. Okay. Well, here's what they said here. Maybe we'll just go with this. This is in the Wall Street Journal. Stored away, and this is not a whatever rag here. So stored away and forgotten until January this year, the sample from the horseshoe bat contains the virus that causes COVID-19. At least this is a claim made by the Wall Street Journal. Now, the Wall Street Journal is owned by Rupert Murdoch, okay, who's known to have publications and news outlets to make claims that are demonstrably false in order to support an ideological agenda. I would like to know, where's the source of that? Where's the source of that information? Wall Street Journal is behind a paywall anyway, so let's not even bother going back. But the Wall Street Journal is making that claim. Peng Zhu, WIV's head of bat virus infection and immunization, was researching the molecular mechanism that allows Ebola and SARS-associated coronaviruses to lie dormant for a long time without causing diseases. Zhu's colleague, Ji Zhengli, who is the person I showed in that picture, has been involved in bioengineering bat coronaviruses, co-authoring a controversial 2015 paper, which described the creation of a new virus. That's the one we talked about. And finally, Nature magazine expressed concern over her experiments. What's more, while the Wuhan Institute of Virology is located about 20 miles, it's not 20, it's actually about 9, from the wet market where roughly 40% of the original outbreaks occurred, China's CDC is located 900 feet away. Literally, here is the picture. There's just a few buildings between the Wuhan Center for Disease Control and Prevention and the Hunan seafood market where this outbreak supposedly happened. Again, the chances of that are not great. That close and that close quarters. In other possible places, the origin had been proven to be highly unlikely. And again, gag orders and so forth. There were attempts to expose this. Again, a lot of them were shut up. And now even the U.S. government, I think, is trying to paste over it because they don't want to create problems with a very powerful adversary, or in our sense, trading partner that supplies almost all our consumer goods. So again, a lot of it's a recapitulation of what we saw in the other article. I just wanted to do a brief picture to show you where the the market is with regard to the actual institute. I'm going to try to let me go ahead and get my picture off here. We can go ahead and show it here. Okay, so you see it in the far right corner. That's the Wuhan Institute of Virology. Just a little jog down a few blocks across a river and up diagonally, and you get into the market. So there we are. That's the map. Let's go to the conventional explanation of it being natural sourced. Now, you have to understand that none of these people actually demonstrated an actual virus which is done in the wild, had these kind of gain of functions. The only ones that I've seen are those that happened artificially. And it doesn't make logical sense that it would happen in the wild because these things are so technologically advanced and they're engineered that way using our own intelligence. It wouldn't normally happen. And there's another problem here too. Viruses aren't largely virulent and deadly because if you kill the host, you actually can't live if you're a virus. So you have an incentive to be actually very transmissible and very non-deadly. The more people you can transmit to and the fewer people you kill, the better off you are as a virus. So there isn't a virus out there that's looking to kill people. That's just, again, propaganda and fear that it's stimulated in people. Viruses and microbes, and this is where I do agree with some of the so-called right-wing scientists like those Bakersfield guys, are normal parts of our environment and educate our system. They create immune therapy through natural exposure. Proper vaccines, not ones dominated by private profiteering where you have animal byproducts and contaminations and no liability because laws protect you, but proper ones that are made by responsible companies with government oversight and without all these deadly additives and preservatives that create side effects that are worse than what the vaccine is supposed to actually be curing, including retroviruses, by the way, which are a whole nother story. But when you have that, when you have a proper vaccine, it can actually educate your body to learn, if you will, in a little bit more of an accelerated way, being exposed to these various types of new proteins. Flu vaccines, on the other hand, have been proven oftentimes to actually limit long-term effectiveness. We have NIH-sponsored papers. We're not talking rags or conspiracy things. And I will talk about this, but we have NIH-sponsored papers that show that repeated exposure to certain vaccines, flu in particular, can diminish overall long-term immune function, probably because of the contaminants in them, among other things. Again, I can't be definitive on this. I will go back and I'll explore in another video those papers. They're scientifically vetted, peer-reviewed papers. But what happens sometimes with these, in one paper, they actually lowered the mortality for a particular strain, but then increased overall flu mortality, probably again by disabling it. And another interesting study showed that literally if a person had a flu vaccine the year before, they'd improve their ability to address the flu that year. But they had 2 flu vaccines in the previous 2 years, it actually diminished it back down to 0. And there are several times when flu vaccines have had not a single prevention effect. They so missed the protein sequence in the mutating viruses that they were completely ineffective. So these are things to consider in terms of taking a flu vaccine. I am not anti-vaccine, I'm actually pro-vaccine, but pro-proper vaccine. An immune therapy vaccine with rigorous, healthy, well-defined, safe, and again, there's probably nothing that's perfectly safe. And even then, I would say, listen, if your immune system can handle it without it, why would you do it? Like anything else, if you rely on something else, oftentimes it diminishes your own capacity to develop fitness. But of course, when it comes to vulnerable populations, when it comes to kids, for instance, again, when I was working with my own son, and we're deciding on vaccinations, and this is very personal to me, and maybe I'll go ahead and go into the thing. When I was working with my own son, when my son was born, the first thing I did was not allow him to have a hepatitis B shot, because hepatitis B does not present itself until basically in adolescence, until sexual activity, until adolescence, way later. And I asked the person there, why are you putting this chemical right into a newborn child? And they said, well, a lot of parents forget. That's why it was recommended. I'm like, so let me get this. You're going to stick these foreign things with all the different chemicals into a newborn, not to prevent any kind of disease they're ever going to get in the next maybe 7 to 13 years, but because people forget. Oh, okay. And when I was starting to look through, I used Dr. Sear's book. I think he's had his license yanked. He's a very moderate person who says, be educated about this. I was taking my son, we were taking my son to the Philippines, which has a lot of exotic diseases. So we knew that it made sense to do some immunization, some limited ones. What I did was I went through that book and found the companies that had the usually most expensive, but the ones with the least amount of animal proteins, preservatives, thimerosal, and these things. We actually researched the individual ones. And furthermore, we did them so that they were spaced out. Where they said they can offer 3 vaccines at the same time, we said, if we can do them individually, even if we're paying, and it was only about $10 or $20 difference. You know, maybe at most 50, okay? But when you are a parent concerned about your kid and you don't want to overwhelm their immune system, that's worth it. And you know you're going to a place where they could actually get a disease that could be quite debilitating. So we used the principles. We weren't anti-vax, we weren't pro-vax, we were medium vax, okay? We looked for the best vaccines with the fewest amount of contaminants and or artificial things made by huge companies with preservatives to keep a big batch go longer. We looked for smaller batches by responsible companies, usually ones in Europe, because they have much better I would say requirements or quality control. And then we got them spaced out, and we got them only when they were needed. And those that weren't deadly, like things like rotavirus and all the ones that they're trying to make you do, we said no. Well, you could die of dehydration. Okay, all right, we're willing to take that chance, but it's not a deadly virus. We do not want to bomb his system with this. So we limited the number of viruses to those that were deadly. We found the vaccines. We limited the vaccines to the ones that were necessary and that that had to do with non-deadly diseases, or got rid of the ones that had to do with non-deadly diseases. We spaced them out, and we found the ones that were the highest quality. So again, this is what when you use logic, this is how it can work. As a parent or as a society, don't be anti-vax, don't be pro-vax, okay? Be sane vax. Be reasonable, logical vax. Proper vaccines can provide immune therapy. The fact that there are so few proper vaccines now because it's been overwhelmed and there's no liability out there makes it very dangerous to take any individual vaccine. You should research it thoroughly. And if there are options out there, oftentimes, unfortunately, those created in Europe, then look into that. I'm not trying to tell you to be anti-vax or pro-vax, okay? I'm just letting you know what I have decided to do. And, you know, you can begin to make your own decisions on this. So, so let's get back to our thing here. This is running longer than I thought, but maybe it's just a good way to do this, okay? Now, what is the scientists, the conventional establishment science view on this? You know, motive means an opportunity. You know that they have opportunity to make massive amounts of money off this, to have funded research if they kowtow the corporate line or they kowtow the conventional line. So the motive and means here, again, funding for oneself would be the motive. The means would be research grants and published articles that happen if you actually toe the line, toe the conventional line, and being removed and sometimes even targeted if you don't. And then finally, opportunity here. The opportunity is oftentimes, again, wealth, patents, and again, very self-interest, not in the public interest. I'm a big fan of having an open source, open process to vet these scientific panels and a complete publicization of the research with critique and with safety measures. So you see what they are. They all say Wuhan lab. This is just the first that come up under this. How we know the coronavirus was not lab created. I just typed that in. And in every one of these articles, it actually did the opposite. It gave evidence for why it was lab created. So let's get to that. Okay, I'll try to wrap this up in the next 10 or 15 minutes. Sorry, I've taken longer than I thought I was going to. The first thing here that they suggested is that more evidence suggests that pangolins may have passed coronavirus from bats to humans. You go through all of this mumbo jumbo, okay? And I'm going down here, and I finally got to this. I just had to. I'm not going to laugh because this is super serious. I'm going to actually get serious here. But I felt my head wanting to just go boom. As a basic human being with logic, look what it's saying here, okay? Discovering the pangolin is the likely missing link. That's the subtitle, right? And here's what it says. Our follow-up study also found that the genetic sequence of a coronavirus discovered in the lung samples of Malayan pangolins, okay, was highly similar to the SARS-CoV-2. The two viruses shared 91% of their genetic sequence. Well, that sounds like a lot, but guess what? Let's go back here. There's a 7% difference with the lab-created virus. So that means they share 93%. They're 2% more similar than the one that they're pointing to in the article that's trying to prove it's a natural virus in Malaysia. Okay, maybe there's a Malayan whatever that is in Africa that has emigrated to China. Maybe it does exist in China. It's just called Malayan because of that. Let's say it is in China because I think they do have pangolin in the meat market. So let's say this Malayan thing is actually native, or one of its ecosystems is actually China. You still have this. You still have it here. This virus is more similar. And China was working on virus, had already announced that it had a new virus. So easily they could have used the same gain of function technology on a virus that was the SARS-CoV-2 virus. That's a lot more reasonable and logical. This doesn't bear any scientific scrutiny at all. It's almost, I mean, it's almost, I want to, my head just wants to go, are you kidding me? You're a serious scientist. You already know this other one is more similar than this one. And you're making the claim, okay, that this one is the more likely candidate, given everything else. And the nucleotide sequence is actually more similar. So I just wanted to say, okay, you know, at that point, what can you say? Now, there's another one here. It said, scientists are tired of explaining why the COVID-19 line was not made in a lab. Well, you've not done a very good job of explaining it because you'd used bad logic and stuff that doesn't make sense. Two features of the virus, talking this about the COVID-19 virus, the mutations in the RBD portion of the spike protein and its distinct backbone rules out laboratory manipulation. Mutations, again, these were deliberately manipulated gain of function, which would be considered like a mutation in the laboratory, okay, that did the exact same thing that this COVID-19 virus is doing. It was meant to attach to a human cell. It was engineered to do it when before it didn't do that. And it was also meant to cleave through that cell and get into it easier. Both of these were human created. So again, all right, what can you say about this? Although it is clear the virus was not created in a lab, again, they keep saying that over and over. We repeat it enough, just like Donald Trump. I guess they think it will become reality, all right? It may have, there are ongoing concerns, it may have escaped the research facility, with most of the speculation focused on the Wuhan Institute of Virology. However, it remains just speculation. The Washington Post recently reported the U.S. embassy officials have safety concerns about the lab back in 2018. And the agency did keep a closely related bat virus. But even that's far from a smoking gun. Look at the language they're using. But even that's far from a smoking gun. They're using that same kind of propaganda language. If you can't absolute prove something, then it's not true. Right? Even if you destroy the evidence. But the preponderance of the evidence, and the evidence beyond a reasonable doubt, and the probable cause, and analysis in terms of motive methods and opportunity all point in the same direction. They do, none of them point in the natural direction. That's pure speculation, and it's not even good speculation. So the closest known relative of SARS-CoV-2 is a bat virus, the one that I mentioned before, which was RATG13, which was kept at the Wuhan Institute of Virology. There's some unfounded speculation that this virus was the origin. Again, look at what they're not saying. I'm not saying that that one that was very similar, that one that was 7% off was the origin. I'm saying it was likely a related virus that hadn't been discovered by other people, that had been identified by that Chinese lab. They'd used the same gain of function research on it and created it. Okay? Did they try to use it as a bioweapon? Every advanced country has these viruses informing their bioweapons program, if not used as an actual bioweapon. Okay? They could do it for defensive reasons. But let's face it, obviously, when you've discovered a new virus, and they're even trying to, in some publications, even saying that it actually is the same. But regardless, it's almost, in my mind, almost certain, given the similarity and the gain of function, again, that this is artificial. There is nothing that lends itself, no explanation in any of these articles that suggests, from any kind of logic whatsoever, that such a leap could have naturally happened through an intermediary animal or anything. It is too much of a leap. There is no logic behind it. There is no evidence behind it, and yet they keep just repeating it. And again, look at this red herring. They're saying, well, you know, this one we're talking about, the one we know about, was sampled from a different one. They're trying to make excuses to say this couldn't have been it. We know it's not it. Its genome sequence is 7% different, and they have 5,000 different nucleotides, okay? 5,000, off in terms of nuclei. But it's extraordinarily similar, and they were collecting thousands of samples of other bat coronaviruses, many of which we don't know anything about. Again, it's just simply likely that they used the same kind of experimental techniques on this, and it got out. And here's the kind of kicker on it. Well, before we go to the kicker, let me see if I can get to this first. No, okay, here we go. We already saw before that there were security lapses in that other lab. Okay, back in this one. If we can go back to this one, there were many lapses. We've already talked about it in terms of the original Newsweek article that this lab had been cited by the U.S. government for serious security lapses. I don't remember where there was another one that actually showed that there had been people infected and had marched out of this lab, this Wuhan Institute of Technology, before. Can't find out where that was, but I did see that also. And so let's go back to, let me see if I can go back to here. Now, this is from this so-called left-wing rag, right? Democracy Now!, whom I generally respect, do, you know, more liberally oriented, tilted, or progressive tilted stuff, and yet they're being flax for the neoliberal elites on this one. They interview a guy who is Dr. Peter Daszak, who is he was working with Sheng Li. He was working with in that study on UNC Chapel Hill. He was one of the guys, he was one of the culprits, if you will, for that SHC04 virus. Let me see this one here. Yes, SHC014 COVID virus. And they bring him on as this impartial arbiter. It was, you know, they criticize, you know, progressives criticize people for bringing on consultants to military industries to, quote, do an analysis of a war when they're actually profiting from defense weapons industries. This man is absolutely got his hands buried deep in the most central role in creating the technology that created this super virus, and she brings him on as an impartial arbiter. So it's not just so-called right-wing, you know, and it's not just neoliberal. It's also progressive, so-called progressive sites like Democracy Now! That get taken in by this. You know, don't buy the hype, okay? And she talks about, this came just one of the Pentagon's top general, says it came from natural sources. We already explained why. They're trying to go ahead and patch things up. And then Zhao Lijuan, China's position on the origin means of transmission is clear. We always believed this was a scientific issue. I would like to remind you that the head of the WHO has repeatedly said there's no evidence that the coronavirus is made in a lab. Notice what this person said. Look at the language. Does this person say China's position is we declare there's absolutely no way we ever did this? No. They divert it. They divert it by saying we always believe this is a scientific issue. Not going to say anything, which could be studied by scientists and medical. I would like to remind you that the head of the WHO, that guy over there, says there's no evidence that the coronavirus is made in a lab. Of course there's no evidence of it because you guys destroyed the evidence. If I asked you directly, did you actually make this virus? They would not answer. And the reason they wouldn't answer is because it's a safe face. Okay, because the answer would be probably, yeah, we did it. Okay, and we're sorry. But that's not going to happen. Okay, we already know that from the cultural emphasis. Amy Goodman, the person in Democracy Now!, says, well, the Lancet says it seems to come from wildlife. Again, no explanation of how it possibly could have come from wildlife. None. You don't get this kind of leap and gain of function in a normal evolutionary process. It'd have to be like zinged with gamma rays from like some weird, you know, star from outer space or something like that. We're talking gain of function that is 50, 100, 200, 300 years of normal evolution. Okay? So do they ever provide any evidence of this natural thing? You've already seen the evidence they have provided. It's worse than just the straight up confirmed evidence of these artificial viruses, okay? Artificially constructed viruses or engineered. So it says, well, for the more of the images of the coronaviruses, Trump's response and where we go from here, we're joined by zoologists who've long studied diseases that cross the animal-human divide. Peter Daszak is with us. He's a disease ecologist, the president of EcoHealth Alliance, the organization that funded that study in UC Chapel Hill, and also the Wuhan Institute of Virology's exact work on this, okay, by the way. See, he's just like a weapons lobbyist trying to talk about war, okay? He's a disease ecologist, president of EcoHealth Alliance, a nonprofit that works globally to identify and study our vulnerabilities. She never directly said, and he, by the way, was a guy who directly involved in the most controversial virus that, that is most closely related to the SARS-CoV-2. And she never asked him any hardball questions about, hey, people are saying this about your research. What do you have to say? She doesn't say that. She lets him flack, right? Welcome to democracy now. Yeah, great to be here. Well, look first, the idea this virus escaped from the lab is just pure baloney. It's simply not true. I've been working with this lab for 15 years, and the samples collected were collected by me and others in collaboration with our Chinese colleagues. There's some of the best scientists in the world. There's no viral isolate in the lab. There is no cultured virus, and that's already related to SARS. That's anything related to SARS coronavirus 2. Well, except that one that's 93% related, dude. So it's just not possible. Now, when someone makes a claim that it's just not possible, you know they're a liar. Right out. This man is a liar. To say, as a responsible scientist, that it's just not possible that this virus is made in a lab when you have something that's 93% identical, that you yourself have worked on with the exact same gain of function, that you yourself made, and then you say it's not possible, and then you provide no explanation for any natural sequence or even logic around natural evolution or production of this virus, then you, my friend, are a liar, okay? And I'm not saying you're a liar generally. I'm saying this statement is a lie. So it is just not possible. That is a lie upon lie. The rest of the stuff is opinion. You and I can differ on that. We can't differ on this. You cannot say it's impossible to engineer this. You cannot say that with any definitiveness, okay? That's saying 100% that something cannot happen, and you know it can. And it's incredibly irresponsible. And when you see things like this, people, it's just not possible, then you know that they're hiding something, or they're just stupid, or they're so bought into their own hype and their own program and their own covering their own butt that they can't see the truth at this point, at which point they're useless and dangerous, frankly. So, Peter, I think you need to apologize for that statement, and you need to come clean about the research itself as best you can. Hey, if you want to be part of the solution, be part of the solution. I'm not here to put you down and just cast you out. I'm saying come clean and actually help, all right? But if you continue to do this is your version of help, then we don't want your help either, okay? So we go on here, and this is an important thing to say here. Many people don't understand that we have our own lab here in the United States, and it's called Fort Detrick. Now, this lab was created back in the war, okay? It's Fort Detrick. It's the U.S. Biological Warfare Laboratories. They don't even hide the name, at Fort Detrick, Maryland, okay? It was under the control of the U.S. Chemical Corps Research and Development Command. It was done in 1943, obviously in the World War II. It was supposedly discontinued in 1969. No, it wasn't. Maybe that iteration of it was, but that research continued on, and we'll see how. Okay, and then it goes a little bit into the history of this. Okay, so this is in Maryland, not too far from DC. And now that same lab, the CDC is shutting down because it's working on an Ebola vaccine and it doesn't have the safety protocols. To repeat, an Army lab that houses Ebola virus and other infectious diseases has been shut down due to violations found in June. Again, look at the date here. This isn't like a long time ago. This is August of 2019. This is just months ago, okay? You'd think. Due to violations found in June by the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention, a CDC woman confirmed to Army Times. But the officials say there's no associated health risk. Okay, breaches of security of megaviruses, no problem. We don't want to get everyone scared or anything here, okay? So the U.S. Medical Research Institute of Infectious Diseases at Fort Detrick, Maryland, is at standstill until the violations are fixed and it's reinstated. They've suspended their registration. It began on July 18th. They stemmed from a May 2018 incident in which Fort Detrick steam sterilization, which handles bio-waste, failed. So it failed to actually sterilize these bugs that they're dealing with. Okay? Again, not a lot of accountability here. We can move on. If you think it couldn't have happened, or that China is some kind of third world country, okay, and they don't know how to do it, we have a lab in here that's worked on Ebola and artificially manipulated versions of Ebola, okay? We've had ones that worked on anthrax and weaponized forms of anthrax, and now this COVID-2. They were working in conjunction with UNC Chapel Hill and Wuhan. They were connected. I mean, I don't know how centrally they were involved, but here we go, okay? So the Army Biowelfare Lab that tests pathogens like Ebola reported 2 containment breaches this year. This is November 25th, 2019. Okay, that's task and purpose as a military site, military thing. Okay, and it goes through and it shows that. It shows its premier biological laboratory, Fort Detrick, reported 2 breaches of containment earlier this year. Again, we talked a little bit about that, demonstrating a failure to implement and maintain containment procedures sufficient to contain select agents or toxins. And then the other person said, well, there's no safety risk here. Well, what is this if not a safety risk? That you didn't sufficiently sterilize seriously dangerous bugs and it got out of the lab and probably into wastewater and other things. How's that not a safety risk? Again, this whole idea, the motive means an opportunity. Motive is, okay, it's already done. We can't do anything about it. We don't want to get people alarmed about it. So we're just going to say it's okay. All right, I get your motive. I get your method just to tell people they're okay. The opportunity in this case is the opportunity to avoid a backlash, probably. But it's not going to help us. And it's not going to help us develop better, more transparent ways to ensure safety, public safety. So again, what went wrong? They noted 6 departures from federal regulations for handling select agents and toxins. This is not China, this is US. One of these departures was the 2 breaches. Another departure was the military. Okay, the other one, sorry, to get my computer recharged again on that one. The other reported issue was propping the door open. You know, Cox said, not one of the breaches. It was noted by the CDC during one of its inspections. The person who propped the door open did not have malintent. They did not do it to openly flout the rules. But again, guys, if you can prop doors open, you know, there's not, you know, in all these films, you have these cards and iris prints and thumbprints, and you think that this is really highly developed stuff. And here you are, you just have people propping doors so you can come in and out. Again, it's not funny. So I have to take a breath on this one. If it weren't, it would be comical if it weren't so deadly. And again, I think we all stand to learn from this. I don't see a lot of that learning precisely because the ways that we have of dealing with things tend to make them even more opaque, or we don't learn anything, so they repeat again. I don't know how many, again, right around September 11th, this was swallowed up by a lot of the news around September 11th, 2001, and the Twin Towers being, you know, planes going into them. But from Fort Detrick was sent, or at least developed, a weaponized form of anthrax that killed a number of people, okay, from our lab, from our people working in our lab, okay? It was weaponized. It was spores that were put in envelopes, highly toxic. Literally, people who just handled them died from this, okay? To let you know that if you don't have security in these facilities, not just letting superbugs go into the wastewater without proper sterilization, not just propping up doors, but literally some degree of accountability and inspection of the people who work there, you get this situation, okay? And we allow ourselves to be distracted. Obviously, we're very more than distracted just right after 9/11, but this was actually happening. I remember because I was actually reading about it in the newspaper at the time. But 7 days after the terrorist attacks, anonymous letters laced with deadly anthrax spores sent from a person who clearly worked at the Fort Detrick lab, as we will see, began arriving at media companies and congressional offices. Over the ensuing months, 5 people died from inhaling that anthrax and 17 others were infected. Here's a timeline. September 11th, hijack it. The first letters containing anthrax were mailed on September 18th, very soon after. This guy, Bob Stevens, died after being exposed to it, of American media in Florida, okay? He's the first anthrax death in 25 years. This was found in the Boca Raton, Florida offices of American Media, the publishers of National Enquirer. The building was closed down. More letters laced with anthrax were posted, and the FBI began to investigate. An NBC employee at New York's tests positive for anthrax. Tom Daschle tells reporters anthrax was found in his office. A 7-month-old son of an ABC News freelancer produced a test positive for anthrax poisoning. CBS employee and a New Jersey postal worker tested positive. Again, a lot of this is created by this rhetoric about the liberal media, and it was being sent to so-called liberal representatives. Though the National Enquirer, I'm not sure how that one worked. They tended to go with, I don't know, with more right-wing causes, shall we say. In fact, it turns out that one of them is the owner of the National Enquirer is a close personal friend and advocate, and oftentimes a cover for Trump. So I'm not sure how that happened. Maybe he was equal opportunity. 2 postal workers confirmed to died. A U.S. State Department mailroom staffer hospitalized. Another New Jersey postal employee test positive. Okay, here it is. There's the Senator Leahy got one of these things. They came after a guy named Hatfield. He filed for defamation. He was the wrong guy. He actually won a $5.8 million settlement, much like Richard Jewell did down in the Olympics. Got a big settlement. And finally, Bruce Ivins, another government scientist suspected, committed suicide, and they basically said it was him. They had no evidence really in the end, but they just closed the case. And they say evidence developed from the investigation established that Dr. Bruce Ivins alone mailed the anthrax letters. Again, where's the proof? Where's the evidence? Oh, national security. You just want to go ahead and bury this embarrassing incident. But again, have you actually improved the security of this thing? I don't see any evidence of that. Independent scientists convened, releasing a review of the science used in the FBI investigation. Again, secret. not us, not allowed to see it. Other scientists not allowed to see it. And scientific evidence, quote, is consistent with the idea that Bruce Ivins could have been the perpetrator. Could have been the perpetrator. Do you see what's going on here, guys? Look at the languaging. It's meant to give you a sense of assurance without actually asserting any truth. In fact, doing that circumspect speaking guarantees and shows that you don't have truth in this. They don't know who did it, okay? They never caught the guy, all right? And for all we know, he's still working there. So what they found, and I'll go to the next one here, is that the guy was actually taking the stuff home and working with it. It says here, this is in 2002. This is, anthrax, other passages lost at Fort Detrick in the 90s. Lost. Lab specimens of anthrax spores, Ebola virus, and this is in the Baltimore Sun, again, not some other rag. January 24th, 2002. Lab specimens of anthrax spores, Ebola virus, and other deadly pathogens disappeared from the Army's Biological Warfare Research Facility. This is in 2002. Remember that Wikipedia article said that they wrapped up in 1969? This is the 1990s. It says, what's the name of this lab? Okay. It says the Army's Biological Warfare Research Facility. Oh, maybe they just changed the name. Okay. So it also, the inquiry, 1992 inquiry at the Frederick facility, it's in Frederick, Maryland, also found evidence that someone was secretly entering a laboratory late at night to conduct unauthorized research. Are you kidding me? There's no card, there's no cameras, there's no anything in the premier bioweapons lab, probably in the not only United States, but probably the world. That's insane. It's absolutely insane. So experts disagree on whether the lost specimens pose a danger. Well, come 10 years later, I think we found the danger there. Weaponized anthrax spores sent and killing people. Okay. And I'm going right here now. A numerical counter on lab equipment has been rolled back to hide work done by the mystery researcher who left the misspelled name anthrax on the machine's electronic memory. Experts disagree on whether the lost specimens pose a danger. An Army spokesman said they do not because they effectively would have been killed by chemicals in preparation for microscopic study. Again, look at the language here, guys. Oh, that would have happened, I'm sure. However, a prominent molecular biologist said that resilient anthrax spores could be retrieved from a treated specimen. No kidding. And guess what? They were. Okay, so this is not just something in a Chinese lab. Okay, let's go back to the Wuhan situation. Okay. The different theories surrounding this. This is from Axios. This is a fairly recent article. The novel coronavirus is being studied at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, and a lab accident resulted in the virus's accidental transmission to an employee who then unknowingly spread the virus in the city after leaving the institute premises. If all of that stuff could have happened in Fort Detrick, literally unauthorized research, literally being able to take stuff out of the building without even knowing it, literally not sterilizing properly stuff and flushing into the system and propping doors open. You don't think that's going to happen in China? If I were China, I'd say, well, look at you guys. Your breaches are far more than ours. You know, you're lucky you didn't get more than 5 people dying from an actual nefarious actor in your situation. At least ours was an accident. So basically, that's what we have. I'm trying to see if there's anything else out here. Yeah, U.S. officials, this is in Business Insiders, are reportedly concerned that safety breaches at a Wuhan lab studying the coronaviruses could cause a pandemic. And if you go down through here, here's the relevant text. In the cables obtained by the Washington Post national security columnist Josh Rogan, U.S. officials raised concern about safety at the Wuhan Institute of Virology in 2018, 2 years before the novel coronavirus outbreak. The lab, which holds a level 4 biosafety research certification, the highest possible rating, was conducting research on coronaviruses in bats. After multiple visits to the lab from a U.S. diplomat in Wuhan and a scientific diplomat at the U.S. Embassy in Beijing, in early 2018, the officials became concerned about the safety of the research and sent 2 sensitive but unclassified cables back to Washington, D.C., asking for assistance to help the lab tighten its safety protocols. According to the Post, a cable dated January 19, 2018 said that during interactions with scientists at the WIV laboratory, they noted the new lab had a serious shortage of appropriately trained technicians, and investigators needed to safely operate the high containment laboratory. The Post said that the diplomats and scientists were particularly worried about the safety of the lab's research on the transmission of bat coronaviruses and warned that sloppy safety protocols for handling contagious viruses in the lab represented a risk of a new SARS-like pandemic. Now, what does it take? What does it take? Okay, all of these concerns, all of these breaches, all of the scientific evidence pointing toward the manipulation and development of a particular species or sequence of bat coronaviruses, some of them likely secret, some of them likely with the same technology, and not a single valid explanation of how a naturally occurring organism would have would be preferred, or the theory about one would be preferred over one that has a closer identification, has a gain of function identical to, and has every evidence of sloppy lab protocol that will allow that to get out. Okay, so the only conclusion I can make here, and the most logical one with the preponderance of evidence that goes beyond reasonable doubt, that's clear and convincing, and that explains the motive, means, and opportunity for the people involved, to the fact that this virus was, in fact, if not created in a lab, manipulated in a lab in such a way and got out of it in such a way that it either combined or was itself simply infecting a worker and then got into a wet market very close to the equivalent of the CDC in China. I don't see any other compelling evidence otherwise. And what gives me an extra affirmative rhetorical, not rhetorical, but forensic evidence is the language used on this. It all indicates to me people trying to save their own butts. It all indicates to me people trying to put this under the rug and redirect. No one has actually, not a single science that I know in all the articles I said, that actually compared the two side by side, as I have, and said, given the evidence, this is why the natural one makes more sense. It's wan, it's simplistic, it's very unconvincing what they presented, and instead what they've tried to do is just pile on a bunch of ideological stuff in order to align with a political agenda. And even the progressives and Amy Goodman hire or bring on the very person involved at the center of this research. I don't agree with any of them. I agree with the facts and how they present themselves in the evidence. And by stitching this together for you, I hope you can see that there is a sane and meaningful way to stitch together and integrate this stuff here. Let's see if there's anything else here. I think this is for, yeah, this is for next time. I'm going to basically look at vaccines, their safety, and I've already presented in this one a medium approach, a sane approach to vaccine as immune therapy. And I hope this doesn't get thrown off. I am not a denier of coronavirus, of SARS-CoV-2. I'm the one who said it's absolutely real. It was absolutely engineered to do this. And I'm not even trying to blame anyone. But I am making a very, very strict and sane statement here. We cannot hide our heads and allow ourselves to be channeled into partisan ideologies in order to obscure the evidence in front of our own eyes. Okay, we need to be able to transcend this. I don't have a problem with saying, okay, China, you made a mistake, just like we did in the United States. China, you were allowed to do this because the Trump administration allowed, under Dr. Fauci, allowed dangerous research to go forward that was actually banned in the Obama administration. And I'm not a fan of Obama, guys. Okay, like I said, I'm a supporter of Bernie Sanders. I'm not a fan of conventional politics. I think we need a real change. But I will say this, people need to take responsibility. Trump needs to take responsibility, and his administration does. But we know that that's not going to happen because he doesn't. And I think also, even during the Obama administration and before, the government needs to take responsibility for these breaches. And it needs to give a good program to us to say what to do with them. Right now, even with something as simple as masks, you have the U.S. Attorney General saying, we don't need them. They're not good. And to a certain extent, he's right. If you have a coronavirus and you're holding it in you, it's not good. You need deeper breathing. But when it comes to transmitting to other people, yes, it's useful. Let's have some sane talk. Every one of these things has a use and a liability to it. Same with vaccines. What are the trade-offs? How can we maximize things? The economic damage from social distancing and shutting down. How do we engage going forward in a layered, phased-in approach back? We're not going to jump back into packed sports stadiums and entertainment events. What can we do to ensure a slow curve of infection, a protection of the people that are most vulnerable among us. Again, these are the ways to get beyond a partisan divide. Do not defend Trump, do not defend Obama, do not defend Joe Biden, do not defend so-called science, especially when it's not being very scientific and it doesn't seem most concerned about the safety of people, more about covering your own butt. We, the people, need to begin to develop a certain amount of accountability, and that starts with being informed in a sane and integrative way. And I hope I've been able to do this with you to help move a new way, critical media literacy, logic and gathering and integration of facts, working across partisan divides and ideological divides to try to get at the real or most likely or the preponderance of evidence actual thing of what's going and what's happening, instead of reflexively or reactively just clinging to our own beliefs or clinging to some representative, clinging to a political party. So I hope this works for everybody out there. At least a new way is being presented to look at these kinds of issues. Again, thank you for watching. It went on way longer than I thought, but at least I think it's pretty comprehensive. Again, thanks for watching, and I will try to continue to do this investigation. Appreciate it. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.